I am really thrilled to be holding this discussion with the makers of Apolonia. But beyond that, and congratulate them, they just got shortlisted for an Oscar yesterday. So that's, we're thrilled about that. But beyond that, super thrilled that we have for a short amount of time, Apollonia Sokol herself is joining us. It was supposed to be this big surprise. It was sort of a last minute thing. We were going to hide her behind the curtain and bring her out. But then it turns out there was a mix up of dates, and she's now on the way to the awards event at some festival somewhere in the mountains. So we have her for a very limited time. And we are going to try and take full advantage of that by just peppering her and Lea, not Lea Glob, but Lea Glob, with questions. I guess the first, I have so many questions, but this, we spend a lot of time on the D word and on our discussions about the relationship between the filmmaker and the subject or protagonist, whatever you call it. I'm going to say subject just for simplicity's sake, which is like particularly fascinating in this film because it seems to be about, in a way, who is the subject? Who has the power here? So I'd love for both of you, but Apollonia, particularly you, since we have who knows how much time we have with you. Tell the driver to drive really slow.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so welcome. What did you make of when Lea came along? She was making a student film. It started out, this young woman comes with a camera in hand. What was it about her that made you trust her to tell your story, even as just a student film?
Well, actually, you were talking about opening up a curtain as a surprise, but as you can see, like the setup of me being in this dark car in the mountains and the lightning is very dramatic, so it's almost like
Really?
a curtain situation. And
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that. But yes, Lea was looking for a subject for a film from film school. For film school, she had an exercise that she had to do, and somebody told her about me, and so she just jumped on a train and came to knock on my door. And for me, that was a very natural thing because I grew up in this theater where there were so many artists, different artists that were doing whatever they had to do, and nobody really was questioning it, or the money was not an issue because there was no money at all. So, like, okay, so this girl is here and she wants to do film, let's just let her.
Um, did you think at all about what the film might turn out to be, or you were just kind of like, let's go with it and see what happens, and this will be fun?
I thought this would be fun, and I never like interfered in her process. Um, I mean, it's a good thing because if I had done that during these 13 years, it would have been a terrible film, probably. If I had like pushed on my ideas onto the post, so she was just like doing her film, and then at the end, Lea let me to not be a part of the editing, but to review it, and we were in a discussion. This is also the intelligence of Lea Glob as an artist, letting me, making sure that my voice would be heard and that I could recognize myself in the documentary. So I was
You
pretty lucky.
Yeah, Lee, I'll get to you in a second, but you said something that intrigued me, which was, you might have made a very different film. What would you have done differently if you
Well,
were
oh,
participating in the editing choices and like a co-director?
I would have made something completely pretentious, you know, about another movie about painting and painters, and probably very pedant and boring to look at, you know. And this film is, of course, about art and how to become an artist. And Lea is also becoming an artist while doing the film. But it just happens naturally, and yeah, I would have made a terrible film for sure. But I'm also a painter. I'm not a filmmaker.
Right. Well, yeah. Leah, I think I know the answer to this. I think we all do. But what was it about Apollonia that you felt like, wow, I've got my subject here, or I've got my film here?
Yeah, well, I was well, hi Apple. Looks nice in the car. Well, I mean,
Hi.
yeah, Apollonia has first of all, just as well, being born in a theater, she can really transform emotions like an actress can. She can use her body on a stage, and she can work in front of a camera. I'm so happy that the Cinema Eye did this unforgettable award, where they award the work in front of the camera, because was clearly a talent of Apollonia. But on top of that, I think that I felt very inspired every time I had been around Apollonia, for many reasons. Many reasons, both as a filmmaker, because you can see how when you have a camera with Apollonia, that the world becomes a stage. It's a very addictive thing to a young cineast. At the same time, Apollonia, growing up in the environment she has and been working within arts for as long as she has, she could give me some answers or poke at some different things, raising questions that I myself, as a young female artist, felt I needed to know more about. And that was something that was very it's the time when I grew up. At this time in Denmark, it was a very particular small environment, and Apollonia also grew up there since she was 8, but she also had this world with her that you also see in the film, from from the Eastern European world. And it was a world of art, and as her art critic says, it was like a labyrinth filled with many things. And that was something that I don't know, it was like I was so hungry for that, and for that world, and especially to see it from a female perspective.
Sure.
So many things like that. Yeah, and then also I just, come on, you can see why.
Julie, can I just ask that you take off the raised hands? I'm not sure we'll have time, if we have time with Apollonia, to get questions from people.
Please use the time for Apple.
Yeah. So, Lea, when I did you shoot as a one-person crew, at least at the beginning?
Yes.
Okay. I do.
When I was pregnant, I had the help, but
Yeah.
otherwise, I'm very sick. I also had some help.
Right. I shoot that way too, except when I'm pregnant. But when I do, and I'm working, shooting with someone, particularly someone who is like the subject of my second film, Homepage, was super charismatic. And the moment I met him, I knew he was going to take over the movie. And I started shooting right away. I didn't want to miss a single gem that came out or think later I shot it, but I didn't. Were you the same way, or did you hang out a while with Apollonia to kind of get her trust and get familiar with her?
Yeah, no, I mean, I was also super pretentious in the beginning. So I had these rules that I'm happy I had, in a way, because you're all filmmakers. So of course I'm kind of happy I had those rules, but they were also super pretentious in a way, because I was like told, like someone I admired told me, I shoot from the beginning. I mean, I always have my camera. If not, you have to have this debate as a filmmaker, when to shoot, when to not. And then you all, it's easy just to say I shoot all the time, I am the camera. And you know, and it was nice because our relationship was really, we got to know each other between the camera. It was like this. It was we were not friends, and then we filmed a little. We became friends during the process of making this film.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, I kind of shot from the beginning, but that was also when we thought it should be like a shorter time. So of course, after that we discussed like what could be interesting, and Apolonia was also calling me when things were important, and sometimes, you know, so yeah, like that.
So, you know, in some ways it was, I guess, more of a collaboration than the normal relationship between filmmaker subject. Or would you say, you know, does that sound accurate, actually?
I don't know, it depends on how you make film, um I guess, because the collaboration is that of course there would be no sense in making a film that would not respect what was important for Apollonia and her work. I thought that would not make much sense, but I don't know what a normal film process is in that way.
Apollonia,
Maybe Sidsel wants to join.
yeah, I'm sorry, Sidsel. I mean, I really will get to you. I don't mean to shut you out of this. Again, I'm just trying to take advantage of the time we might have with Apollonia.
Absolutely, do.
Apollonia,
I see.
did you feel like you, I mean, had the, you know, there's sort of an inherent power relationship with filmmaker subject. You know, filmmaker kind of in a sense having the ultimate power because they're controlling the editing of it. But you had a certain degree of power, I take it, from just like what you would permit her to shoot. And it seemed like almost you were suggesting shots during the film. You know, you certainly did during the scene where you took off your clothes outdoors and, you know, said, shoot with, you know, it's, so how were you aware of that? You know, that I cannot just, I not only trust Lea personally, but I feel like I have some sort of say in this.
Um, you know, like this film is really interesting because it was made over such a long time. So as Lea said, our relationship changed over the years. At the beginning, Lea was being a little bit like you know, academical from the Danish film school, you know, and so with all these rules, as she said, like having to be a fly on the wall and filming us, you know, being very discreet. And so and that was a way of filming where she would like, in a way, I think that this way of filming is allowing for the creator or the artist or the filmmaker to project all kind of fantasies on the person or on the subject, right? So this was, I feel that this is my opinion. I feel that this is the beginning of the film, and then slowly over time, Lea, you know, like turned the camera toward herself, and, you know, included herself more and more in the film. And at that point, I don't become a subject anymore. I believe that I become a person, and then the power dynamics have completely switched, or not switched, but they're more balanced, as we are both artists, understanding that we are becoming artists and becoming, maturing into this patriarchal society. And so that's how I feel that Lea has, like, in a way, done a transcendent work over her own genre as a documentarist. you were saying something about like a normal documentary. I don't think that documentaries can be normal, because I mean, I don't know what normal means neither, but it's a very particular type of art. On the other hand, I can say totally the same thing about painting. In the Western art history, men usually have, like at least in the modern times, have paid very precarious women that they desired to like pose as models, and then these women were deprived of their identities and were forced to symbolize allegories that have nothing to do with them. And the painters would rather name this painting Vanity or The Bath instead of the actual name of the model. Like we have like a huge tradition, especially in France, for muses and all this terrible culture in my domain. So I think that I learned a lot from this, the process of how Lea made her film, and myself, I also, train people, and I use their names as titles for the paintings, and I represent them the way they want to be represented. So, and this is also what Lea did in her film. Am I talking too much?
Not at all. And I'm glad you're talking fast because we have short time.
And I think, as just to add for Apple, what she says is also that I think that we within our own industry of filmmaking have also some of these like patriarchal structures of the governing idea of what a film is. And I feel like sometimes if you maybe listen more, or you approach it in a little different way, it's not about not directing, it's just also like listening, and that's I think what made me what I really also had to learn in the finalizing process of this was also that it was equally important to listen to achieve this film. Yeah.
Let me just say as an aside to the folks who are watching this, interesting, called by Zoom participants. If you have questions, rather than use for Apolonia especially, rather than use the raised hand, put the question in the chat, and I'll try and hopefully if we have time, I'll get to that. Apolonia, do you feel like the process of making the film, and specifically having somebody follow you around with a camera at certain important events and things, impact your art and your career in some way? Was it good to have a camera around at some of these times? Did it, were you?
I'm very lucky.
Yeah.
I'm so pardon. I just wanted to say that I'm very lucky as a female artist, because this is like one of the, like main problems in this is structural discrimination, that minorities are going through. And I believe that being a woman in patriarchal society is being in a way is being a minority, like maybe not like in the worst way, but still. And so like systematically art and female artists are being destroyed, or they're not being archived in museums. So I'm very lucky that I have a film that shows also, but it's not about my work, it's about like how tough the art world is, and also like how to mature as a woman in this society. So that's also what I'm really happy that it's there. I need to go now. I'm already at the awards.
Okay, well, good luck. Thank you
I'm
so much for
sorry.
the time you gave us. It's too bad we had such limited time with you, but thanks so much for
Thank
going
you.
above and beyond. And
Thank
good
you
luck
for
with,
having me. Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome. Okay, I didn't want to ignore Sidsel and Sigrid, so I'd love to know when you came on the projects, why you came on the projects, you know, how you were approached, how you heard about it. I assume it was once after the film went from being a student film to a feature film. But Sidsel, you came on first, I understand. So what, when, and why? You're muted, by the way.
I can definitely start. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. I didn't come on first. Sigrid actually did, and she invited me on board. So maybe Sigrid should start.
Okay.
I can start, but Sidsel is still the big producing star. I would clearly put that out to everyone. There's nobody that can beat Sidsel at what she's done on this film and just how stubborn and incredible she's been. But yeah, I met Lea at the film school. I saw her film. I think I met you right sort of at the end of your film school, and I saw your midterm film about Apolonia, and I was like, Lea, I really hope you continue to shoot with this incredible woman, because she's more than a short film. There's more material in her than in a short film. And Lea was very clear and was like, yes, I have the same feeling. There's much more in Apolonia, and I think I actually want to do my graduation film about her. And I think we had a brief talk about the graduation film, and very clearly Lea, through that conversation, was like, maybe not, like maybe I should keep Apolonia for like a big film that I'll continue to do after the film school. So she chose to do a different film for her graduation film, which I'm super grateful for, because I'm not sure we would be here had she done it, but she didn't do it. And so Lea then started following Apolonia after the film school, and one day came to Danish Documentary, which was my old company, and presented the film and the idea, and especially me as the only producer in that company, and also Eva Mulvad, who is a great film director. We sort of had a look and discussion with Lea about how to orchestrate a project like this, because we kind of knew it was going to take a long time. And
Perfect. Sigrid, let me stop you there. How do you orchestrate? What did you tell them in terms of, Lea, in terms of how to orchestrate?
I mean, I'm a busy producer and I have a lot of films. So it was quite clear quite early that Lea really needed somebody next to her, and somebody that was going to follow this film like on a daily basis producing it. And that's why I reached out to Sidsel, who had previously been my old assistant. She wasn't anymore. She had done some films herself, and she is really an amazing producer. So it didn't feel like any sacrifice, or it was not like Lea was going to get a secondary producer at all. But we kind of knew that she needed somebody on a daily basis to work with her from there. And how do you orchestrate long shootings like this? Or, I mean, I would say clearly Lea is an amazing film director. I know, Lea, you are so humble and you're not going to talk about yourself like this, but she's an amazing film director. And one of the things is the listening, which I think is enormously important, that Lea mentioned herself. But another thing that I think Lea is really good at is actually treating a film like creating a sculpture. So she's also working with what comes in reality, and sort of trying to build that in a story that would work cinematically. And that type of director that can sort of mold a story while reality is happening is, for me, very rare. Like, I meet a lot of incredible directors. I'm sure there's a lot here that are really incredible directors, but there's not that many directors that feels the liberty and the freedom to sort of mold the film as reality kicks into the ideas you have as a filmmaker. And we could very early see that talent. We hired Lea as a DOP on another film so she could make some money and be part of a film called Love Child that I was producing, that Eva Mulvad was directing. So we encouraged Lea to have a couple of other films while she was making this huge piece to sort of make a living. Because of course you can't make a living of making a film over 13 years, unfortunately, but you can make a masterful piece.
Thanks, Sigrid. Sidsel, when Sigrid brought you on, and I clearly met with Lea, before deciding to become producer on it. What was it about the film that most appealed to you? And then what did you start doing as the kind of hands-on producer during the process over the years?
So I knew Lea a little bit. I'd followed her work at film school, so I very much knew her as a big talent. And when we met the first time, you shared some footage with me, and it was just super apparent that that Lea is not only a great cinematographer, she also knows how to position herself in the story to make great scenes while filming. So I think that's where the listening also comes in, like being very present in the scene, actually, with your protagonist or subjects. And so, yes, I was just very fascinated by this talent, and also the whole bohemian setting and this life of Apolonia. And in the beginning, we didn't know it was going to be 13 years, obviously. When Lea proposed the project, we talked about scope and how to actually make it a project. And the timeline was 1 year. So that was a very different setup. And that all changed. But so the first thing was really, we applied to the summer school that IDFA has. And this was all part of a plan to get the Danish funding. We always do the national funding first, securing sort of the base, and then we go more international. And yes, getting on this workshop sort of put the film on a level, or got the exposure that brought us the meetings with commissioning editors, and also we pitched the film at IDFA that same year in the fall, and got the first funding. So that was really important. And well, then over Christmas we had the shoot in LA, and things really changed then. But I think maybe Lea can speak to that.
How did you pitch it? I mean, first of all, what did you show? Was it like a sample, like a work sample of, like, say 5 to 10 minutes? But how did you describe it in those meetings to funders?
Yeah, so yeah, sure, go ahead, Lea. Yeah.
No, well, right. It's almost difficult to remember all of these things, like saying, but I think that, well, it was really important. I think we are educated in a very specific tradition in the Danish Film School of Denmark. Now it has changed slightly, but we had these Mogens Rukov, who was a dramaturgy teacher. He was a teacher there when I was there, and he wrote the script for Another Round and for the celebration of Thomas Vinterberg. And I think a lot of the sort of core mentality of this, like a dogma movement, has been like something very really stuck into the National Film School. And so this methodology of storytelling from how can you say, from a fiction approach, but very much dramaturgy as always, like approaching this person with the natural story of storytelling and of shooting was like super inspiring. So in a way we kind of wrote all the time, like looking at reality and then seeing like, okay, so imagining being in a novel or something and how to write this. So, and at the other end of that spectrum was the teachings at the National Film School with our teacher Arne Bro, who did a very special way of like trying to say like how can an artist preserve what is really what you are fascinated in within a project, within a documentary project, and not think of it as something that is a problem. So if you always frame like this with your horizontal line slanty like this, then maybe it's a style. Don't throw it away to think that's wrong, go mainstream, but just keep what is natural to you, what you kind of like. And that can be like a certain type of person, a certain lighting, a certain way of moving with the camera, and ideology, anything. And what I really appreciated from that schooling was that as a filmmaker there, it's I mean, it seems impossible if you start a film, almost, I think, but we had this very nice tradition and method to keep what you really treasure and keep your insecurities boxed in while you do the whole formal process of the filmmaking, because you will encounter so many doubts and insecurities. So these are really like the two methods I come from in terms of filmmaking. Those were the two, yeah, like keep that.
When you talked about earlier about
Yeah.
giving and imposing these rules at the beginning on,
Yes.
did that come out of dogma and your dogma influence?
No, that came out of me just looking at like, okay, I thought like, because I took a choice, just like Apolonia took a choice. I took a choice that documentary, not like the cinema, documentary cinema was like my home. And I fell completely in love when I found it. So I took like a decision, okay, I want to be good at this. And then being very young and ambitious, would look to my older colleagues and see like, okay, who are great? Who can I learn from? Being like super hungry. So I just took everything all my heroes told me and kind of tried to do the same. So this about having the camera, that was just like someone told me that, I film all the time, because then I don't have to debate whether I have to sit and drink coffee or not. So in that was from there. But the rules that we did take was very much given in the assignments. So it was like, you can only spend 3 weeks, you can only have 2 locations, and you can only have, I don't know, 1 person and 1 other person. So that was like a way of thinking of how to build a film from these dogma kind of rules, which was something that I had to discover in the process of making this film, that actually I do not believe in it anymore, or at least it does not fit for me as a person or as a filmmaker. But that was also a process of growing up, right? To see that what you are taught is actually not fitting the world view of cinema that you were taught. Some of it you keep, but some doesn't fit you. And that also created some frictions, of course, because of my mentors from another generation, but I love them dearly, as we all love our mentors so dearly, right? Because they teach us everything, and then we have to rebel against and find our own positions.
You have to kill your mentors. Oh, wait a second, that's kill
Yeah,
your mate.
no. Kill your darlings. Yeah. No, but
so I'm
so
curious.
how do you pitch it? How do you pitch it? It was a story about a young artist, I think, like, and in the beginning most of the feedback was, but she's not famous, so what's interesting. And we got, I guess, as everybody trying to pitch a documentary film, it's like, so what's the ending, or is she famous?
Yeah, so that was our pitch, really. What if she ends up being the next Frida Kahlo? That was,
She almost
want to miss out on this.
Yeah. So the film became, increasingly, well, I mean, it didn't start out to be incorporate your story as much as it did. At what point did you realize it was important that your story be there and as well? And what role, Sidsel and Sigrid, did you play in encouraging it to go in that direction?
Should I start?
Sure,
Yes.
anyone.
Yeah, well, I am. It's not a strange to me to use myself in the films that I have done. I have done that before. I really do love the word in documentary films. Many of the films that I love very much are very like word driven. I also come from Denmark. It's like Hans Christian Andersen and Karen Blixen and like storytelling in this tradition. And really my way into cinema was actually as a storyteller also, because one of the first times I really felt the power of the story was when I talked, because I never knew my father, and one day they called from a prison and said that he had died. And this is a story that, you know, long story. I did a film about it, but I really felt that this power that a storytelling can have, it was both in a personal life, but also to it's something you share with the audience or the people you tell it to try to figure out something about being a person. So I think this, like, telling a story is something that's, I don't know, within me, kind of. And then I thought, okay, I also really like this story about the directors or the filmmakers, because we are such great characters, right? We put up with anything in this high hopes and dreams to create something. And I always loved the stories of the filmmakers. And what was also very important was that when I was filming Apolonia, and there was a lot of fascination, and by not putting myself in this fascination, it became like very voyeuristic project. At the same time, we had the whole like film history of how you look at women in cinema. And so a woman sitting on a bed, it would be, it was so easily become something that it was not at all. And so these structures of images, I mean, I had to work on how to puncture this storytelling about women that just appeared because of the sort of cinema history, right? Also just endings. I had to cut out an ending that was very nice because it mirrored the beginning, and it was like objectively very cute. I loved the scene very much, but it was just because it had a home and a key and a man. It was like, okay, good. Then Apolonia got married and she got a home and a nice boyfriend. So great. And it's like, and it was like, no. This is not an ending. This cannot be an ending of a film. It's like the whole feminist project just going down the drain like this. So it was also like always for me really a discovery into my own journey of feminism, both in terms of what's inside me, because I grew up in a very specific place, very opposite to Apolonia. So it was also dealing with what are the fascinations and what's behind of those fascinations, and also like and what are the important questions in the stories of being a woman and being a female filmmaker. And I was the key in many ways to all of that. And then from a very like low how can you say, practical level, having a time span this big, I would need something to tell the story, because it's not, I mean, there would be gaps, and it would be more interesting if we had the context for all of those things. So how to do it elegantly. And I chose the story and details of the story you could have also taken a more like formalistic aesthetic approach, where, for instance, you could frame the film of the paintings just stand the paintings of the different times and go into the life of Apollonia and everything. That could also have been a very interesting film, I think. But at the end, we chose the story of the three female artists, including Apollonia's mother, four, and seeing that as everyone contributed to the story of these dilemmas that a female artist is going through. I'm sorry, I'm told I talk a lot, so I'll stop.
So Sidsel, Sigrid, go ahead.
Can I just add something? Because I think I was totally against Lea being part of the film, and thought this is crazy, and it's a film about Apollonia, and she's this incredible artist, and blah blah blah. And I think I did, push Lea, to tell her story less and be more on Apollonia. But what happened in reality was that Lea got really sick, and she almost died. And I got a phone call in Los Angeles where I was that we don't know if she's gonna survive. And then you have to sort of look at what is the story now. And this was maybe like 10 years down the line or 11 years down the line, Lea, am I remembering correctly? Like
Yeah,
11 years down the line. The first step was Lea thought the film was going to end after Los Angeles, when she was going to shoot Los Angeles. And then Appy was in such a bad state, after Los Angeles. And this is also one of the things I love about you, Lea, is that Lea was like, I cannot end my movie here. I mean, all of us thought, oh, she's going to be done after Los Angeles. And then Lea came home and she's like, I'm not done, because my main subject is really not doing well. And I'm not going to leave her when she is at this stage. I'm going to continue to film with her until it gets better. So that was very responsible, I think, from Lea's perspective, to say that's not my movie. My movie is not going to end with a tragically sad ending of Apollonia trying to meet the market, becoming an artist in this crazy male-dominated market. But the second thing is that Lea then got sick. So, of course, once you realize that reality kicks so heavily in, I'm just so proud of Lea to be able to fight against dumb producers like me, totally dumb idiots that don't understand the level of Lea's personal journey. And then I think another thing that I did not realize until kind of late in the editing, also dumb producer doesn't understand shit, but there was something in the way of the editing where if you removed Lea's story, Apollonia was actually less emotional. She was more dry, like more to the point, more like, this is not working for me, or I'm going to try and do this. It kind of died a little between your hands. Apollonia died a little. And so the powerful job of this editing that Lea has done mostly with her husband is sort of like building in Lea's story to actually shine some emotion on Apollonia and actually make Apollonia's story much more emotional. And I think, that's a level of editing. And I've been doing these kind of crazy documentary films for 23 years, and even I can learn stuff. And I have learned a lot from Lea and Sidsel, because if Lea had not built in her story, you would not have loved Apollonia in the same way as you are doing, because everything that happens to Lea shines a light back right onto Apollonia. Everything that happens to Apollonia shines a light right back to Lea. So it's a very delicate balance between, and also even adding, Apollonia's wife and partner, even adding her into the picture is really a third level of what can shine emotions on these women.
Yeah, a little surprising to hear you say that, Sigrid, because for years you've been encouraging me to make my film more personal. So,
yeah, and maybe it's a subconscious malish way of doing films. Like maybe it's subconsciously without me even knowing, I know I'm going to say something very provocative now, but maybe subconsciously, I don't think, or I didn't think that a female personal story could sort of be so powerful that it could, lay the world down as this film has actually been doing. And it's my mistake. I'm like 10 years or even more older than Lea, and I'm also a product of my time. And so I'm just enormously proud of Lea and Sidsel being so goddamn stubborn and telling old ladies, like, shut the fuck up. I'm in that movie. And I'm gonna stay in there because I think that was definitely a big battle during the whole editing phase, to be enormously honest. And this is what the D word is. We have to share with you all our battles, and this was a battle.
Thank you. Really appreciate that. And by the way, folks, use the raised hand function if you have questions. We'll get to them pretty quickly. But Sidsel, can you speak to that aspect of how the film developed story-wise?
Yeah. So for me, it wasn't, it was, as Lea describes, a pretty natural step in the film. We'd been through all the treatments, we'd always been seeing this film as a mirror between two female artists. And then it was on paper, but it wasn't in the edit. And when all this happened in the film, Lea's illness, the passing of Oksana, and we got to the sort of the key sentence of the film, which was there's no creation without sacrifice, and this pointed to the three female destinies. It was a very natural thing to include Lea's voice. And also, just in reference to what you're saying, Sigrid, we did have a lot of why did she film so long? Why is she, why is she still filming? And this sort of also solved this very practical aspect of keeping the filming going for years and sort of having her reflection during all this time in the film.
And I can also say that I think that also just on a personal level, and this thing of, because I'm from the same environment as Sidsel and Sigrid, from this Danish very typical environment, and I don't know about feminism in different places, but I had seriously a thirst for some of those things that Apolonia really embodied in terms of feminism and speaking about that, and it hit me very deeply. And one of the things was that, and also, like, I always got inspired to create something when I was in the presence of Apolonia. And this inspiration, for sometimes it lacked in the editing. It wasn't that the audience went away with this inspiration to create, see the possibilities, and believing in continuing to do it and create. So when we had a more like natural, not natural, how can you say, objective cut, some of that, I didn't know, where did it go, And some of it was that, of course, it was because when allowing in what I experienced, like that inspiration of Apolonia, the audience needed that. So it also needed to be a feminist piece, because that was the driving force for a young woman to follow an artist like Apolonia. This thirst that there were not many representations of a female painter. I come from a family background of male painters, and I know the story of painters. I never saw a female painter, and when I saw her, when I had her in my lens, it was mind-blowing for me. Yeah.
We have a lot of questions, so I'll just ask one more before we get to our participants' questions. When I met with the three of you down at during Doc NYC, you mentioned that Lea, you really emphasized how close Lea came to dying after childbirth and with the infection. That, am I correct? It was like 36 surgeries or something on that order. I didn't
Yeah.
get that sense. I didn't get that sense in the film as much. It certainly seemed something serious happened, but why did you decide to kind of downplay that a bit?
Oh, it was because it took over. If it we had a film, right? And if it was longer, first of all, it's very complicated to understand, like, because I, just to tell everybody here what happened was that I gave birth to my son, and after giving birth, I started to feel bad. And it turned out that I had an infection that became very brutal and that mutated quite a lot. So it put me into a coma. And yeah, and then, you know, it was, yeah. And then, so it was a very, very hard time. And when we put it into the film, it was important that it was there, but it shouldn't take over. So it was kind of important. It did not have to take up too much space in this story. So it was very practical, because then you started to go into a whole different kind of story, and it's still, even though I'm there reflecting, this is a film about Apolonia and like what she had dedicated her life to do. One of them being making everyone like realize that giving birth is something that is not really represented within our popular culture, and it creates problems because we have so many stereotypes on like pregnant women. And I experienced that also, because I was actually doing like crying a bit out for help at some times, and was neglected because we have this feeling that you are told that it should be painful, and women are, after giving birth, are a bit like, I don't know, something like that. So anyways, it was important. It was a story about Apolonia, and it should continue that way. So we balanced the story to serve that purpose. And also I liked,
that the not to like drag on you like whole Lea's sickness story, but it was 4 months in a hospital, so it wasn't sort of like a quick thing. It was a very long thing, and she couldn't walk when she got out of the hospital, and the camera helped her to get back, and the film helped her to get back and get well. So the film kind of basically saved Lea's life in a very specific way. And I think
doctors and
of course the doctors as well, but like mentally to sort of get. And I would say I was at Sheffield with you right after you sort of got out, and at a pitching forum. And I think one of the important things that you, Lea, and I at least discussed a lot was the story of Lea's death experience, which was a death experience. It's another film. It's a huge film. And it's a big film. And Lea, you are going to make that film at some point. I know it, because it's an enormous film. So it just, are you going to try and get that enormous film into a film about Apolonia and 2 young women becoming an artist? Or is that sort of just going to muddy everything? I think you found a fantastic balance, and it was very hard to find that balance. But of course, we're all encouraging Lea to do that film that she has inside her for like a new film, which is huge.
I have so many more questions. I promised that I would let.
I just saw somewhere in the comments, I don't have overview, but someone mentioning that the creative process is healing. And that is something that that it's just, I just wanted to highlight that sentence from the comments, because it's very true. And I was so lucky to find that, and I guess if people had been doing other things than film, that would maybe be it, but the drive was so huge to do I mean, to make films that I also like in the film, one of the notions is that, oh, but then you have a baby and a child and you're a woman and then you are happy and content and that's how it should stay. So I had a kind of nice moment when we wrote the narration, saying that, oh, and then I came home with my babies and I bought a camera and left, you know, because it's also true. It's not, I love my family and I love these things, but it's still this urge to create doesn't go away if you choose or, you know, accidentally become a mother. And so we put it in there also for that, I mean, for that reason. And then, I don't know, then I think just images and our link to eternity and the use of image is something so deep also that but Apolonia can talk about that for hours also. I talk too
So
much.
someone who could talk elegantly about the healing power of creativity is our first questioner, Erica
Yes.
Ginsberg, who just published a book called Creative Resilience that I am soaking up. It's a great book on the subject. So anyway, start off, Erica.
Thanks, Doug. Wow. I'm just, I watched the film for the first time yesterday, so it's very fresh in my mind. And I actually feel that the amount that you put into the story of your, hospitalization was very powerful. And in fact, I feel, I also appreciate, Sigrid, your honesty about that, sort of questioning how much Lea would be in the film, because I really felt that that's what made the film. And I actually felt that Apollonia was very emotional. I mean, she may not show it all the time, but you saw it through her art. You saw it through these small moments. But I feel like by putting yourself in the film, Lea, it made the story much bigger than one artist. It was more about what it means to be an artist and specifically how women have to make difficult choices. And I think sort of, what you were just talking about, that sort of simplification of you either have to be an artist or you have to be a mother, you can't be both, you can't balance both. And, so I think that leads to a lot of interesting questions and reflections, particularly I think for women. I don't want to speak for all the women who have their hands up after me, and I want to give them time to ask their questions. But I guess with that big opening, I really wanted to know more about your process with the voiceover. Were you sort of doing that, writing that as you went? Was that something you sort of said, okay, now I am at the, I have the material I need to end the film, so now I'm going to create all the voiceover narration now? So I'd love to know more about your process with that.
Right. I think we kept I was writing with the Sidsel in the beginning for the treatments, and I think that some of these nice lines that we got to. Just going to the question. I mean, thank you so much. I really, I'm very happy for that reading, and I think that I'm gonna read Creative Resistance because I only experienced that, I had that thought after making this film. But I really want to learn more about that. I think it's very important. But anyways, for the narration, there's always like great things that came, for instance, when Stefan Simkovic was telling me, like, I was telling him that my great-grandfather was kind of hosting painters or artists because he had a steady job. So he would always have booze and, a little money and make a big feast. And then the painters in Denmark would go there when they were hungry and, they would need cash, they would sell a painting and so on. And then I told him, yeah, so I think that is how, he made his art collection. And then he answered to me, oh, yeah, well, I industrialized that. And so a line like that, I industrialized that, and why buy the art when it's so much cheaper to buy the artist? I would have loved to have my camera at those points, but I didn't have it. But I had the words, the dialogues. So I always noted that. And it's somehow working with Sidsel simultaneously, always writing, I think was great. But then in the editing, it was, to be honest, it was a very difficult process to get it right, because it really, it sounded horrible at times, and it was very difficult. But we had a cut, I think a 3-hour or 4-hour cut, and then we should try to like integrate the narration into it. And it did not work to think of a film, for me at least, this way of having something and then putting something on top of it, like this. So I was, so a lot of things changed when I started to edit with my husband, Andreas, because he was an editor, but he's also a writer. So it was really nice, because I became a bit of a subject myself in that process. So, it was also just like throwing a lot of things and then trying it out, and it took forever. And when it was bad, it was so horrible. I mean, so terrible. So it was really, yeah, it's even hard for me to say like exactly how we did it, because it's so much trial and error, and I don't even know why things really work and why others don't. So
We could do a whole long webinar on narration and writing,
yes.
with trial and error. And for me, I'll have narration readings on 10 different audio tracks, and take like a word from one and a phrase from another, and then it's you go crazy trying to make it work. So I totally relate. Clemencia, you are up next.
Okay. Well, thank you, Lea and Sigrid and Sidsel. It seems to me that it was a great combination of minds and talents. And also that relationship of Lea and Api, where you can see the symbiotic relationship, that it's almost like one existed, but the other had to exist in order to tell that story. And it's like the twins or this connection, that it was always there. And it's very present, and it's very female, and it's very, very hard feeling. So that was very nice accomplished. And I think it's your vision as a filmmaker. So I wanted to ask you a couple of like normal questions, where is like, what camera did you select it, and why the type of camera and the size of camera? Because I always think like, and how do you feel that camera affected your subject or the other subjects and the environment? Because I always feel that sometimes when you enter into certain environments and you have certain amount of camera or another, it affects the environment, the type of camera. So, and you were able to create a really symbiotic relationship. Obviously, you felt very good with each other, but overall, and you're saying, I'm carrying with camera all the time. So I want to hear you on your experience and your wisdom of what you learned on this process and creativity you had.
Right. Well, thank you very much for that. What you said in the beginning, I also really just feel like emphasizing, because this film could never have been, if it hadn't been for the environment that was in that present time in the Danish sort of film documentary environment, that was very supportive and protective, and had like traditions of, helping each other out. And also the Danish documentary company being founded by women that would go for the, you could, think this is the right way or this is the wrong way, but you kept the film open, and you kept, the filmmaker doing what she wanted. So you can, which is, I would have been shut down many times if it had been in different setups. I know, because I have director friends who were shut down, put in a drawer. So many generations of women have been actually, and also men, but have been working to create this film environment where these things could happen. So that I just wanted to say. in terms of camera, the very first material from film school was shot on a Sony PD-100, and which was the Dogma cameras, really crappy, but I really love it. I still think it's a very good camera. Then I had a short period of time where I didn't really could afford a camera. Then I shot with whatever my other productions had, and then I borrowed it at night, shooting a little. Then when I could afford a camera, it was also a PD PMW, Sony PMW, I think. But the great thing was that I got a very good tip from a DOP friend that it doesn't matter of the camera, but the lens matters. And then I saved up for a 35mm lens with no zoom, and then I used that for every camera I used from the PMW camera, and I think that really what that made for me was that it was great because the distance to people, they always knew where I was. So not using the zoom, I would stand very, very close to people, and I would stand very far away. And it didn't really matter. I think maybe it was good because then they knew, where I was in the room. The only thing is that it was a bit too heavy actually on the wrist, so I got actually a bit worn down. I found out when I got sick from the x-rays. I do have, so it in a way it's it's not good because it creates fractures in the bones to just carry it without rigs. I hate rigs. I want to carry the camera and I want to see in the eye, so I always use the oculars, and I prefer like this. So yeah. So
It's,
I think that was...
I find it's, look, I love longitudinal films to begin with, but I love it when the formats change, the cameras change over the years and they get better. And, subliminally, you're talking about an artist getting better, when the images get better over the course of the film, I don't think you're conscious of it necessarily, but I think it's sort of an interesting layer of the artistry of telling the story. Not necessarily one that you can predict or plan for, but it always astonishes me, I guess, that so many people in our cinematography topic are so concerned with matching cameras, and getting a camera that looks like the one they've shot with, when there's a lot to be said for the differences between the camera formats. Ariel, you are next on deck.
Lea, could you quickly just say what audio? There was a question of the audio. What microphones you were using?
Yeah, no, I was using always one HF, or what is it called, the micro port, the portable with an IPA mic, which is a good mic, and then just a point mic. But that also works because I was on a 35 lens, so I was always very close to whoever was talking. Yeah.
Hi, Lea.
Hello. Hello.
Good to see you again. I interviewed
Yes.
Lea just earlier on in the week for my podcast, but I wanted to thank you again so much for this film because it is so incredible. And I want to add to Doug's comment earlier that, really the process of seeing in this film as it goes along is not just the process of seeing the equipment get better, but also you yourself as a filmmaker growing and,
Right.
improving in your processes as well. I know we talked about that a little bit, but one of the things that struck me watching the film a second time around, I was wondering, How did you feel the burden of representation as you were creating this film, knowing that you were trying to make with it, how much pressure did you feel to really represent all women in filmmaking and in the arts and so forth? Like, did you feel this tremendous burden of representation?
No, to be honest, I think it's a very important question, and I did not answer that question myself too early on, because this tradition that I'm from is that if you dare to tell from the very personal, it's very wide also. But at one point, the burden of representation, of course, had to be treated wisely, because that it turned out it was not like that in the very beginning, but it also developed deeper and deeper within the themes of the paintings of Apollonia. So in the very beginning, also Apollonia was like searching for something more like her family past and history, and maybe migration and dealing with roots. So that was more on top of mind there. But then after I got sick in 17. So it was just before the #MeToo movement, and I felt like people of the world had put into words and into a vocabulary what I had been feeling, but not being able to really put into words myself. And I was sick, I was locked inside, I couldn't go out, and I felt like this whole feminist revolution was taking place outside of the window, and it was great, and it made so many minorities in different ways reflect, including myself. And after that moment, of course, like, how could one ignore the thing of representation? So I think it was really at that moment I started to asking myself very much those questions. And it's also part of like maturity, I think. So I don't know the burden. I mean, in the edit, we discussed it a lot, because how it's difficult I think in documentary filmmaking, because if you really typecast, and then that's a very process, but in this term where it's like a fascination of a person and what this person stands for, and that leads the dance, you can say. So it was difficult how to deal with it, and we tried best we could. And I was so happy when we talked yesterday, because you saw that I was offered an interpretation that the disability of the body was actually something that brought together Apollonia, Oksana, and I. And I think that that made me very like happy, because I experienced so much, like when my body was I thought I could never do film again, or do anything. So this, like, I felt so ashamed, and I had no idea why you feel so ashamed of being sick. It doesn't make sense, but it happens when your strength is like broken down or something. I don't know if it answered. Yeah.
Sorry, I was muted. Jody, you're up next.
A compliment and a question for Lea. Lea, as someone who thinks a lot about what's the best way to film art, I so valued the scenes of Apollonia as she's making her art. I love how, you literally see the female gaze as she's sitting there studying her art. I like how they slowed down. I love how you use the music differently and the sound, especially the scene towards the end where all we hear is her applying the masking tape as she's revising a piece. I thought so much of that, so many films just use the visual arts as kind of like wallpaper. So I really, really value that. My question is, throughout the film, that the themes of patriarchy and the relationship to art appears again and again is a girding theme. And yet when I'd call him notorious Simkovitz comes on camera, to me, it seems you were quite generous with him. You didn't have to be completely heavy-handed, but I'm curious about how did you know his reputation going into it? I mean, there was the film about him. I think that it's a Dutch group put out that film in 2017. I'm not sure what year you shot that, but I'm curious how you went about that, because in a way you were rather generous, and it seemed as if you didn't weigh in and assess him in the way that we hear from you in other parts of the film, and your thinking on these ideas of patriarchy and art and control.
Right. Yes. Well, thank you for that question. I think it's a very good question. I think we shot in 15. We shot this scene. So it was before #MeToo movement, and it was before we didn't know that much about art market and art speculation at that point. It was not, we were not really aware of that. Then of course it was, I think, I don't know if I've been too generous. I struggle a little bit in the filmmaking of how much in depth I can go with him and his methods of working with artists, and that I did for two reasons. One reason was that I myself am taking the audience as a viewer through the film, and if I am smarter than I was at the point where I was filming, it created a friction that I could not really take control of. So if I have my reflections from today added from a more wise person than the person who shot it, like Lea in the film thinking, it kind of dropped. I never really had to figure it out. But to be honest with you, what I would have really loved that I would have been able to do was to tell more about what the methods of Simkovitz. But every time I did it, I had another problem. He became too interesting in the film to the audience. So it took over from the story of Apolonia. So it was I really struggled with this actually in the editing, because what Apolonia did not know that time was that she says that if he gets angry, he can sell all her paintings cheap, which is not the real deal. The real danger is that they get too expensive, that he can build up a bubble. He can charge huge prices for paintings that only the Prince of Saudi Arabia can afford. He will buy them, and as I understand, then after that there are only so many people who can buy that. And of course, this is not something that goes to Apolonia. This is the works that Simkovitz have acquired, and then it will drop, and she'll go down, and she'll no longer be able to get the usual investors for art or something like this. But it was so difficult to have that in the film at this point, taking away from what was like more important was that she took this recontrol of her body, like of the female body, and using it in a different way, like she did in this bridge that she does with her body. She paints that a lot, and she also did one when she had finished all her paintings. She did like this, and I did photographs of it, and then she took it from what she actually created in the film and reversed it in real life to use this figure of the female out in reality. And somehow I lost that if I got more specific at that point in the film. So I'm not to say that the balance is like completely right. And also, I mean, also to be honest, of course, it's also something that if you go into this area, I thought of the journalistic field of, for instance, exposure of different things. You would have to have a counterweight argument. At some point, you would also have to invite the person to make a statement. So it was also the balance of this, like, in a way, does it make sense?
I mean, can I add something? Because I just think one of the things that I think is so fascinating when you talk about it, and I think that is a discussion I often have with filmmakers in the editing room, is like, how clever is the camera? You know, because of course you're super clever when you've shot everything and you're in the editing and you're like, oh no, now I could see what he was doing, blah, 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 and we should sort of twist it that way. But the film wasn't that type of film, because the film was a film about two young women becoming artists, and they were learning along the way, and they were not overly clever. They were going by instincts, going by feelings, going by ideas, going by impulses. And if you suddenly are very clever on a side character, it breaks the film in a way. And so it's not new what you were saying, like, why were you too nice to him? Like, did he get too much leverage? Did you allow him to just be the guy he was? But in a way, it makes you feel more with Lea and with Apolonia experiencing Simkovich. You know, we're with them, sympathizing, looking at this crazy creep. And had the camera been more clever in these scenes, we probably wouldn't have been together with our two protagonists, Lea and Apolonia. So I think it's a very important discussion. How clever is the camera, especially on these longitudinal projects where you're like slowly seeing development happen in front of the camera over many years. How clever can you be then? And it's actually an exercise to be not clever. You know, it's easier to be clever, but to sort of remove it, it's hard.
But it's also something like really worth, because it is a huge problem. and this thing that you can be near it and somehow navigate it. So it is like, but it's more like it's a novel almost to explore this. And
but it's not very normal for American documentaries films. Now I'm generalizing a lot, and I'm so sorry. I love American filmmaking, and I'm not gonna say anything bad about documentary filmmaking, because a lot of Europeans, we look at American documentaries and we're like, whoa, that would be nice. Why don't we do an interview like that? You know, we learn a lot from American film telling in documentaries. But I would say there is a tendency that the Europeans sometimes, or other type of filmmakers that are not in the American tradition, they sometimes are more willing to show naivety and weaknesses. Some would say it's a weakness, but I would say it's a generosity, that you actually allow the audience to be with them and see this fragile moments of exploration. And I think allowing that naivety to be inside the films is super interesting, and can sparkle a lot of stories coming from that naivety and that point. Whereas if you're too clever, you kind of kill your own story in a way. You are taking away the drama, because you are now much more clever than you were when you were filming it. So it's an interesting debate.
I would love to say, though, if I had found the one line that just nailed it, I would have loved to put it there. If please someone give me a line, and I'll try if I can.
We're not gonna open the. Sidsel is gonna get a heart attack if we open the voiceover again. But yeah.
Oh, come on. You know, Sigrid, by the way, I hope you don't learn from American documentaries the second camera profile shot on an interview or drones, excessive use of drones. Um,
True, and I think
anyway,
sometimes it works really well. I mean, it's just for this film, the style of the film is just different, and every film is different. So it's just I treasure when I see that classical European sort of way of sharing curiosity and naivety and keeping away the cleverness. I actually really like it.
AK, you've been waiting patiently. You're on.
Thank you. This is such a fascinating conversation. I'm curious if you could all speak to your approach on dividing producer responsibilities, you know, like initially when you said first producer, second producer, also with the filmmaker as producer, like how do you split responsibilities and maintain them throughout the process or renegotiate them? And I'm forgetting the other part of the question, but maybe it'll come back to me. But yeah, I'm just curious. Oh, and then story consultant, like when Sigrid, you said like you thought it should be different. Like, do you bring in a story consultant or do you just hash it out amongst yourselves? Because that's one thing I'm tripping, and my project is early in development, a personal story, but I'm thinking like, do I get a story consultant first? How do I split responsibilities with different producers? Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yes, thank you for that question. So I guess it was pretty set from the beginning that I would be handling all the day-to-day and also did the financing and everything in contracts and the team and everything related to scheduling and all this. But Lea did a huge part in organizing your shoots, right? Too. And for in terms of bringing in consultants, we did this very much along the way. Whenever we felt that we had hit like a crossroad or somewhere where we needed some external advice, and we would bring in Sigrid or some of the other executive producers, but also people from different fields, writers, and yeah.
Sidsel, can you talk a little bit about your day-to-day work with Lea? I mean, how often did you communicate on sort of a daily basis? And how much a part of the creative, what kind of creative input did you have into the film?
Yeah, so that changed a lot over the years because the sort of the nature of the collaboration changed with the illness, and also well, I could start from the beginning. It was very much writing, pitching, formulating a film, doing these few but very focused shoots. I think we were very precise on what we wanted to do. Lea had a narrative in her mind. It was almost like a narrative film. And the way that Lea knew that you sure that what you wanted to do.
To say though that I found out that the times where I just went without a plan were usually the best in the editing.
Totally. Doesn't that always work out as the best? Sometimes the unplanned.
Yes.
But you said it changed.
Oh yeah, it changed. I think well, there was almost a year where we had a very, low communication. Lea was ill, and I was also on maternity leave. So we were doing this funding while Lea was ill, and also doing a lot of work on the collaborators side. We had almost 20 different collaborators that we needed to juggle and
When you say collaborators, do you mean funders?
Funders, yes.
But also public service broadcasters. And I think,
Yeah,
you know,
funders and podcasters and
could have like a fucking clapping hand for keeping broadcasters like this saying she's gonna get well, she's gonna get well, she's gonna come back, the film is gonna be delivered at some point, because
Yes.
that was a big job, Sidsel, just keeping all these broadcasters, you know, moving the delivery dates endlessly.
Yes, exactly. And also when the scope of the film changed, we had to renegotiate from 90 minutes to 116. So that was the second round of please be patient with us. And yes.
How did you deal with notes from the broadcasters that may not have gone along with the vision you had for the film?
Do you want to speak to that, Lea?
Yes.
Broadcaster.
Well,
broadcaster
I
notes.
think that it was great. I mean, we talked a lot on the phone, Sidsel and I. Sidsel got 2 children while doing this film, and I got 1, and sickness happened. Taking notes, well, I mean, I think we were kind of lucky. There were some things that went on. Many of the collaborators were actually young women. Also, many of the ones who decided to commission the film were very interested in what Apolonia was representing. So I think that gave us a largeness in terms of this, that they saw the sort of the point also. And then when we got to the notes, we had some more, like, some were very, but I mean, it was like a lot of speaking to a lot of people, and getting, many notes and interpretations. It's actually, it's a little bit foggy. I don't really remember. I think that the HBO collaboration was very nice.
Only HBO East Europe, we should say.
East Europe, yeah. It's apparently it's not the same thing, but people were generally really nice to call and to give notes kind of right away, and so we could discuss it. Yeah.
We are going right up to the brink.
But could I just say one thing, Lea? It's also because you come from a film school and you actually learn how to take notes and I think that's, you could do, Doc, a whole session about how to take notes and how to work with notes in the editing room. But working with many different type of directors, also directors coming from France and UK and America and all different places, the Danish film school actually trains their film students to handle notes, and they are so fucking good at it. I mean, they're really good at it. So maybe you should do a whole session.
Well, we actually did.
Yeah,
we did say,
so
we had one on giving and receiving feedback. That's actually on our YouTube channel. So it wasn't the final word on it, but we did, broach the subject. I think we have just time. Will, you've waited a long time, so we'll let you squeeze your question in, and then I think we'll close it off.
Can I just say one question?
Oh, please go ahead, Lea.
This, if it was commissioned, co-produced, or acquired, maybe you should just say that a little bit about that, Sidsel, because it was a co-production.
Sorry, what's the question?
If it was commissioned, co-produced, or acquired.
Yeah, so all of those. It was commissioned by the Danish Film Institute. So this is our national funding body in Denmark, and we co-produced the film with a wonderful Polish company called Staron Film, And they got the Polish Film Institute funding along with some regional funds that allowed us to do the music score is recorded in Szczecin, a city in Poland where they have this wonderful philharmonics. We did sound with them, sound designer, and what else? I feel like
Then was
DOP, yeah.
pre-bought by TV, right? Or
Sorry, and then it was there were pre-buys by TV, and yes,
and
but all European.
total budget or what?
Sorry, what's it?
Should we share the total budget of it?
Sure.
Or-
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I don't know. The producers
Well,
are
I'll let
so-
you know it's less than $1 million, so that's
And greater than.
oh
900.
Rhymes with.
500 half, yeah, yes.
Okay. Will, are you still there to ask your question?
I'm here. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, my question might be a way of getting at that in a sort of different way, but I was really struck by the line when the part where Apolonia has to face that critique and kind of hear your only way to succeed is to be really, really good. And, you know, that was sort of frustrating, obviously. Amazing job capturing all that, such a poignant film. And this theme, of course, made me think about your film, amazing film, beautiful work. I'm so grateful that it's getting attention, finding its audience. And of course, I'm wondering, you know, what do you have to do for a film like this to not be kept a secret, you know, to find its wider audience? So is there something besides all you shared today to kind of make an amazing story that you feel is really important for your movie like this to reach all of us? And obviously it's going to go on to reach much broader audiences. So that's exciting. Thanks.
Yeah, I think if I can speak to that, I think what was really, really important, and one thing that I guess is sort of a guiding light for anything that we do is find the people that love your project and your film and that really, really want to do something for it and with it. I think that the fact that we chose the IDFA premiere was key to where we are now, because they absolutely loved the film, and from day one they just worked so hard to give us that platform. So yes, choose your premiere and your people wisely, I think.
Well,
And
we
it-
were.
I could speak a little to the Academy campaign, and that is, you know, if you don't have anybody on your film that knows all these Academy members and call them constantly or email them like I did with Doc, like you have to, Doc, it's your type of film, you have to see it. You know, if you don't have these people on your team, bring them on your team, because, you know, there's only so much you can do yourself, and we also have incredible publicists helping us, and you know, I am in the Academy, and I've done Academy campaigns before, and I think it's also, don't be shy. If you have a gem and a fantastic film, try and get some good people on it, and producers can actually help you get your film out. They're not just irritating people that want money for their job. They're actually also people that can help you get the film out. So I think get some people on your film that loves it. I think that Sissel's words are really clever. But on top of that, think who knows a lot of people, because network is key to get your film out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So everybody talk it up, will ya? And yeah, I really loved it. I'm so glad that we were able to have you guys come. The timing was great. I'm so glad Apolonia was able to join us.